Okay, so I don't have enough storage to record this class for my students who told me they cannot come. I wish them the best at their other program at the other center. So until we work out something how we're working out with the timetable, thank you for watching this video. Today we're going to start the topic, narrative writing. Right? So y'all can laugh, but y'all will watch this video and you'll be happy I recorded it. So they're going to start the topic narrative writing today. The objectives for this lesson is so that we can know a bit about narrative writing. You can't perfect something or excel at something unless you understand the rudimentary aspects about it, right? So the first thing we want to know is, what is narrative writing? Anybody? What is narrative writing?
Writing a story.
Writing a story. Excellent. So a narrative is a story. Now, what genre of literature? Remember, we had the genre. So we had done fiction and non-fiction. Which genre does literature, does narrative belong to?
Okay, but most likely none.
Okay, so most likely non-fiction. You are very right. So narrative, yes. Your green book? No, I don't have a green book. All I have is the booklet for you, that's it. Right, so narrative can be both fiction and non-fiction, because fiction means that it's fake and non-fiction means that it is factual. So non-fiction is mainly for the purpose of teaching and informing, but you can also have a life story that is for the purpose of teaching and informing, like biographies and autobiographies. But mainly, narratives belong to fiction. So we make up stories. That's basically what it is. Why do we make up stories? Why was this whole genre of fake stories created?
Make it interesting.
To make what interesting?
So I can have a product you want to sell.
A product you want to sell.
And you want people to buy it, and like, so, because then like, say something in there, but you just making.
Okay, so what you're talking about is an anecdote. So an anecdote is a story that is used to give some information that will be helpful towards your persuasive deep goal. So let's say you're trying to persuade somebody, you come up with a story that will help them to be persuaded by you, so you use an anecdote. But narratives, do you believe that narratives were originally created to teach life lessons? Now in Hollywood, we know all these wonderful stories about shiny vampires and all of these, nice stories that make millions of dollars. And we think that narratives are for entertainment. But when you look at the word entertainment, when you look at the etymology of the word entertainment, actually means to give careful consideration and thought to something. Entertainment is not about humor or laughing or just being distracted. Many times we think entertainment, we think a nice distraction to relieve stress and all of that. That's not what entertainment is. Entertainment in the archaic form of the word means to enter in. So you have to enter into a state of thoughtfulness. So narratives actually belong to a type of teaching called teleology. Teleology is the art of teaching through a story. Now, if you look at stories from long, long, long ago, let's look at the oldest story that you know. What are some of the oldest stories you know?
The cow jump over the moon.
Cow jump over the moon. Give me a story even older than that, Chazaya. What is the oldest book that we read to this day? The Bible. The Bible. And if you look at the Bible, what is the Bible filled of? Stories. Stories. So narratives in its truest, most purest form is a form of non-fiction where we tell stories to teach people life lessons or whatever lessons we want to teach them. So in teaching people lessons, they become entertaining. Entertain meaning they give careful consideration and thought to something. So that is why it would make sense that all stories have something called a theme. And do you know what is another word for theme? Thought. even when we started doing stories as babies, when we started doing Little Red Riding Hood and the Cow Jumped Over the Moon, there is one thing that we always ask children to find at the end of the story. What we call that? When you tell children stories, Little Red Riding Hood and the boy who cried wolf, you tell them, what is something at the end of the story you need to find? At the end of the story.
A lesson.
A lesson. What is another word for the lesson? It starts with an M. Meaning, yes, but there's another word we usually.
Oh, moral.
The moral of the story. The moral. Now, when you hear the word moral, what is another word that you usually consider when you hear the word moral? Morals and values. You never heard people talk about having morals and values?
It's true.
Why you laugh?
It's true.
It sounds like old people talking, they have to have morals and values. But, yes, morals and values.
It's true.
Right? So, if we're telling these children stories so that they can learn morals, so that they will have values, it means that the story itself has value. It has a lesson. It has something. So sometimes these days when we read stories or we hear stories about this criminal getting away with millions of dollars and that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
Sometimes you feel like if you were robbed of something, you were robbed of morals and value. Right? So the purpose of narratives is really to teach life lessons. So in trying to teach life lessons, we use stories, and we use stories of different things. It can be animals, it can be people, it can be made up robots, it can be anything. But these stories all have certain elements, we call them elements of plot, that must be included in the story. So what do these elements do? When we have these non-fiction prose stories that teach us, they must have certain elements in a specific sequence. Right? So when you have these elements, you must also have a specific sequence that the story must follow. And the reason why we do that is because life follows a specific sequence. And these life stories were actually taught by using real life stories of real life people. Right? So you know, it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, because nobody's life starts in the middle. And nobody's life continues forever and ever. It always comes to an end. So the beginning, middle, and the end is filled with different things. We call them literary techniques and devices. Now, what is a technique? What is a technique? What is a technique? If I tell you what, show me the technique. Tekla, I know you can bake
Some kind of skill.
dough boy. So the technique is your certain skill. Exactly. So a literary technique is a certain skill that we employ to write literature. What is a device? Chesiah, what is a device? Something you use, exactly. Yes, so a literary device is something that you use to write a story. So when you develop these skills and how to use these devices, for example, these sewing machines in here, these are devices. And there are different techniques if you want a round neck shirt, if you want this style, you want that style, there are different techniques you will have to use with this device to accomplish your goal. So that's the same thing that we do in literature. So basically, what you're going to learn in the duration of this module is how to use these specific techniques and devices in the specific sequence to make sure that you tell a story, not just to tell any random story, you know, because I don't want random stories. I want stories that have morals and values. Okay? So what kind of morals and values will we be required to teach people? Let's look at Bible stories. What are some of the morals and values that they teach in the Bible?
Well,
They want to see kindness.
Kindness.
Yeah.
Kindness. Yes, so we have kindness.
How was that to come?
What is there to come? So, where do you call that? What you call when people don't act in a specific way and then things happen to them because of that? It starts with C. It starts with C-O-N. Consequences. Now, things to come. Look at the word says sequence. It don't tell you what it is. It tells you what it is in the word in a sequence. Con means with, and with the sequence means things to follow. Things to follow. Consequence, right? So it teaches consequences. What are some others?
Faithfulness.
Yes, faithfulness, having faith and belief. Hope. The big one what Jesus always preaching about. The big one. The big L. The L word. Love, yeah. Love. Joy. Peace. Now you will notice the list can go on and on because the fruits of the Spirit are many. Right? And there are lots of what we call them patience. What we call patience? We say patience is a virtue. You know, all of these are virtues. So all of these values are virtuous, meaning they are righteous, they are good. But when we tell the story, do we just show all of these wonderful things? At the beginning of the story, everybody loving, everybody peaceful, everybody happy. No. What happens in the beginning of stories? You don't tell a story? Okay. A movie is also a narrative because it follows a storyline. So let me use movies. But you should read books, Jose.
Yeah, let's read book.
So what the storyline say? It don't have any...
It started like...
Yeah, it have a name.
It started? Okay. So okay, it will have a name of the book. So we have the name of the book, so that we call that the title. What else it will have? Who is going to be peaceful and kind and hopeful and loving? The character, right? Is the character starting off with all of these virtues, these values and morals that we're trying to teach?
Well, it's some of them start off good.
Some of them start off good.
They're like going down into the...
Going down.
Yeah.
What happens when they go down? They still good?
No.
Right. Good. So that is what I want to show. So on this list, we are trying to teach virtues and those values and morals that are good in society that we want people to entertain. We want them to give what? What does entertain mean? Careful consideration or thought. Right? We want you to enter in. Enter into the feelings of this. Enter into the thought process, the meditation of this thing. That is what entertainment is. Entertainment is not distraction. You hear everybody talking about TikTok and all these things are distractions. Distractions actually keep you from thinking about these necessary things in society. When you go on TikTok and everybody talking, what is the moral and values you see in there? Okay? Now, entertainment is really to allow you to get careful and consideration and thought on something. Now, when the character starts to go down that decline, all of this is good. That is why virtues are opposite to vices. When people say have vice, what they mean?
Boisterous.
You're boisterous. Boisterous meaning you love talk loud. You're blackguarded. You're blackguarded, yes. But vice actually means that you are vicious. You are filled with evil. So if virtue means good, it means you have values. Values is a good thing. You have morals. Morals is a good thing. Vices is the opposite. So when you're thinking about your story, for every good virtue that you want to portray, you have to show the opposite. So if you want to show kindness, the character or characters or the storyline must have something where somebody was unkind. And through their unkind acts, or through their non-generous acts or their ingenuine or inauthentic acts, we see the consequences of that. So we learn that kindness is the way to be. Right? So they whipped Jesus and they beat him and whatever because the man didn't want to talk. Because he said he is something that he believes himself to be. And then we realize what? We need to love people for who they are. Right? Because we have to learn that lesson when we face the evil.
Everybody put up as well about the racist people that not possible. It's when it's down the racism crap.
Okay, so I'm gonna put racism here. Right? So racism would be a vice. What would be the opposite of racism? Love. So you have to show in your storyline that you have a racist person. At the end of the story, they're still gonna be racist?
Yeah.
Yes? So that at the end of the story, they're still gonna be racist? You can't be racist at the end of the story.
Then the story won't have
That's a bad story. I don't want to sit down and watch that. I don't want to read that book. There is no moral. Thank you very much, Tekla. Well, if you kill them, some stories end like that. Some stories do end where the evil does not prevail. Not all the time they convert. Sometimes they die. We call that catharsis. Or, well, catharsis is where we feel justified. We purge our emotions. It's like, yeah, boy, I don't like racist people and he dead. I feel good about that. That is catharsis. When an evil person dies, we call that nemesis. And you would have heard this word before when people say they have a nemesis. Right? It is just an evil that cannot be destroyed. So God has to do the ultimate destruction, which is take it out of this world. Right? Some stories are like that. But should I kill off people in the story for nothing? When you could convert them and show that, people can change.
It's racist people.
Well, there we go. So we already know all of Josiah's story is going to be horrors, mysteries, murders, thrillers, all of that. Right? So everybody just going to dead. Once they don't have any good values, just dead. So Josiah is going to be writing about a totalitarian society. Right? Putin is the president, all of that.
Once any president, everyone is gone.
Everyone is gone. So all I do for God, because I don't know what I make wrong, and Josiah might say, well, you know what? Off with your head. So in the stories, you would realize that it will start off with somebody either having a bad quality or a good quality, and we will follow the sequence of that. Sometimes they start off with very good qualities and then something happens. Now these things that happen, yes?
There's another question.
Yes.
I'm going to put the president here.
Mm-hmm.
I put a president. You get notification because distressing.
I know, right? That would be a good moral. Such as the moral of the story is teachers get ultimate treatment. We get vacation, so no learning taking place because teachers are permanent vacation. Fully paid?
Huh?
Fully paid? Man, yes, I vote for Josiah.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, all of the stories would eventually boil down to good versus evil. And in your attempt to show good versus evil, you will use this balance of virtues and vices to show the characteristics. When we talk about characteristics of people, it comes from the word character. The characteristics of people. So that when people engage with a story, they are learning lessons. Right? They are learning lessons about life. They are entertained. They are given something to think carefully about. And that is why Bible stories are very good in teaching children life lessons. Life lessons that you may not want them to learn the hard way. And those lessons they are passed down and passed down and passed down. But you notice what happened? The morals and the values never change. Right? No matter how many times you read the story, the morals and the values never change. And that is the theme. That is the whole theme. That is the reason why you decide to put pen to paper. So a lot of people, when they're writing stories, they believe they need 15 different things to happen. And the star boy has to do this, and they have to have that, and they're going to be rich, and they're going to have a helicopter. And What really matters is that you have a story that teaches a lesson and you put that in a good sequence, beginning, middle, and end, so that the readers will not be confused, but they can follow along in the plot. When you become perfect at getting the beginning, middle, and end, you will then start enhancing your literary techniques and using more devices, and your stories will then become very exciting, because these literary techniques and devices actually appeal to the imagination and the emotion of the reader. So your imagination is going to help you to envision it in your mind, and your emotion is going to help you feel it. If you write a bad story, you're not going to feel it. Let me give you an example. Have you ever had to ask a 5-year-old child what happened? An incident happened and you have to ask a 5-year-old child, alright, now tell me what happened. What happens with the, what do you feel at the time? Frustration, right?
Yeah.
Because they have to hear, and then, and by the time you hear all this and then and rigmarole, you're frustrated more than anything else. You don't even understand why the child is crying. Right? So Uncle, thank you for coming. I have recorded the class, so you will get to watch it. Because Kenny and Gavisha will be making it and Javed has not shown up.
Miss, that boy didn't want me to know the boy then.
You calm yourself.
Thank you.
Calm yourself.
So what happened to you?
Don't let me put your business out. Don't let me put your business out.
What happened to you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Make you not come.
Don't let me put your business out here.
Thank you.
I couldn't make it.
No speak at all.
Don't speak. Don't speak. Put it in the story. Put it in the story. Javed was here asking for you. Worried, sick. Couldn't even focus. Last week. Yes. He said he hasn't seen you in the community for a very long time. Don't let me put your business over here. Yes, Javed was here. Javed was here last week. Yes, Miss Pompey, thank you for joining us. We are looking at narrative writing. A narrative is a story. You know what's a story, right? But why do we write stories? Stories are for entertainment, which means to actually give careful consideration and thought to something. So as we give careful and consideration to these stories, we actually learn a lesson. Sometimes you tell the children what is the lesson they learn. We ask them what is the moral of this story. So the stories are actually supposed to teach morals and values. Now these morals and values, we listed some of them here. These represent the good. But the story don't start off with the good. They usually start off with some of the bad. So these virtues over here, which represent our morals and values, are often juxtaposed. Juxtapose is another word that you will learn. Juxtapose meaning opposite side by side. Right? Opposite side by side. Juxtapose. They are often juxtaposed by vices, which is the bad. So we had kindness, the bad will be being unkind. Love, the bad will be hate. We have peace, the bad will be war. So these virtues are juxtaposed with vices. And when we learn about these vices, the stories will teach us the lessons of the consequences of these evils. So we will not be evil and will be good in the end. Or Josiah has decided to just kill them all off. Okay? And that is called nemesis. When we experience emotions through the stories, we call it catharsis. Okay? Now these stories must have a specific sequence, beginning, middle, end. And in this sequence, it will use literary techniques and devices. Techniques being a skill on how we do something, same way how we learn how to do bulldog. Right, so that's a technique. The device, we have to learn what utensils we need to use, the tools. So we use these literary techniques and devices to appeal to the imagination and the emotion. Now imagination is what we envision in the story. Emotion is how we feel about the story. So I was just asking, Have you ever had to ask a 5-year-old child what happened? Tails running up, nose snotty, and you ask them what happened.
And they must stammer.
Right. So because of all of those breaks and the stammering and the rigmarole and all of that going around the circumlocution and all of that, sometimes at the end of the story we're frustrated. That's what happens when we don't plan our stories and we don't write coherent stories. We end up with these frustrated narratives that don't teach people anything because it cannot appeal to their emotion or their imagination. They don't know where to start and they don't know where it ends. Okay? So that is the purpose of narrative. I want to get into what are the elements of plot, but I want for you all to do a little exercise for us and tell me what are some of the things that you need to make a story, and then we'll pull out the elements of plot. I really hope this thing could record and download, you know.
Still going?
It's still going on. I don't have this amount of space on my phone to record the whole class, and it was a benefit just to do the voice recording. Remember when we did the voice recording, you all had the exam paper to follow along. This is new content, so I don't want to rob those who are at the other centers because
The center.
some of the students sign up for stuff at the other centers.
Which other center is this?
Down one side.
Ah,
Food and drinks down there.
you know that?
Yes, you can do other programs at other centers, Josiah. But if you live close to the area, like Gavisha. Right, so she lives close to the center, so she will sign up at that center. So it's only 6 weeks. So for her to miss a 6 weeks program to come here, I could just use the technology, set up my online. If we had Microsoft
Say about
Teams.
so. You can download that there.
Microsoft Teams? No, the ministries. I have an account, but y'all may not have an account because it's for students. So I don't know, maybe Zoom, but then every half hour it will check out.
Then
I just want something that I could record and share. Just so that y'all will not miss. Anyone that you don't know? Anecdote, that's what Josiah was telling us, that sometimes we give a story to sell something. So when you tell people a story, so you can persuade them, sometimes you tell people a story so that you can persuade them to think a certain way or to believe something. Like you say, when I was, let me hear your story.
It's like another one.
Yes.
It's like if you like create a game.
Yes.
You know, and game all that, but you just want people to download it.
Right.
And it's
Okay,
like
so start the game. You usually see these people pop up in the middle of a YouTube video. My child couldn't read at 6 years old. I tried everything and until I downloaded blah 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 blah.
Why you download the app?
Yes, that's an anecdote. Tell your business so that you could go ahead and do what they want you to do. Some people usually come, boy, I know what my hand is again, $5 again. Anecdote. Don't get caught up with that. It's a persuasive technique. We'll do that when we're persuasive, right? So who knew that narratives were for teaching purposes? Right. So I want you all to consider that carefully. That the things that we consider as entertainment are distractions. So a lot of the things that we consider entertainment are distractions. Sometimes I listen to music. Music also tells story. Not true, drift.
Some.
Come up in a, they tell stories, right?
Some music.
The song still playing out the head, yes.
And you sound like when they were singing like, I remember those days when hell was my
Yes, hell was my home, yes.
Yes.
Yes, they tell stories. But then look at some of the songs these young people listening to. Shootout and gun, killer man, you know, bulletin brain, shootout man.
You understand?
Bulletin brain for sandwich. I heard that one the other day. The shootout brain for sandwich. I said, wow. Shootout is for sandwich.
Lad.
sing and I say, hey, get out of here, I don't want that in my house. But my man, when they play me say because you are indulged, you listen.
But mommy, you can't tell him what to do.
I said, don't listen to what in my house.
Maybe I will send it.
No, me just tell you. Catch you rolling that. I'm going to Anthony. I want Anthony to go.
Okay.
Okay, me change it.
So you're strict, mommy.
Yeah,
None of that in my house.
None in my house.
Alright. So when we look at these songs that tell these stories, yes, I remember that one. I remember those days when hell was my home and yes, those stories. What brought you think those songs telling those stories? Motivation, yeah, but long suffering, perseverance, hard work, diligence. But then when you look at those that tell you shoot out and flam with money that you shoot out and all of that, you realize that those songs are not for entertainment, because what are they really trying to teach the listeners?
Them kind of song that teach them people like me. I mean, like
young people, yes.
Yeah. Violence.
Violence. But is violence a virtue? Is it morally right? Right. So that I understand that. Josiah, I can't wait to read your story. Josiah, I can't wait to read your story. I understand that violence is important. But wanton violence, what is wanton? Wanton, that's another word for you. Wanton, yeah, lots of words today. Wanton violence. Wanton violence could never be right, because look, if love is a virtue and war is the opposite of that, don't you think wanton violence is war? Why do people go to war? Look, Ukraine and Russia is at war. Why?
Over gas.
Russia said, they just support.
You think so?
Russia, they don't have a behavior, man. Putin.
They feel like up.
Yeah, Putin is just a bully.
What?
Putin and I.
I am so hot. Putin is fighting for us.
How Putin is fighting for us now?
Because Ukraine wants to join with NATO. NATO is an imperialist. NATO is an imperialist organization. Yes, NATO is an imperialist organization for Washington. The countries that you all think exist are not real. They do not run. The governments and the politicians, they're not real. They're being manipulated by money people. The money people belong to the Vatican, London City, and Washington. These are not countries. These are the money people. These are who control the governments of the world. And Washington has now created NATO and is asking for countries to join up with NATO so that they will be the imperialists. It's like a neo-colonization. So they want to put an army base in Ukraine so that they can have an army base close to Russia. So that they can bomb Russia and do Russia whatever they want and hold Russia ransom. If you know a gunman living next to you, you're gonna watch him coming in there with guns and don't call police. That's what it is. It's fighting for war. Look at what they did in Africa. They did the same. America has a lot of army bases set up. France has a lot of army bases set up. They cordon off the area and they say, this is an army base, y'all can't come here. And then they do all sorts of illegal mining and so on and export this out of the country and what? The Africans have no say. It's a political war. It's a war of power. It's not just Putin trying to show his prowess, but it's difficult for us to get that narrative, that storyline, when we only listen to one side of the story. You have to listen to other news, Eastern news from India, Al Jazeera, those places, and then you get a different narrative.
Yeah, it's back to the Russian thing. There's some other countries like dodging out the American money or whatever.
Yes, they're reducing the American money because they have no interest in joining NATO. They do not want to be a colony of America.
That's why American money is set up in England.
Yes, because that is why England did the Brexit. Because when the European Union joined up with NATO and they realized America was now, well, not America, because America is a country, but I said Washington is the power. Vatican, London City, and Washington are the powers of the world. When they manipulate the governments have to follow. They run the banks.
So,
Money run things, you know. Y'all have a lot to do with politics, baby. I should teach a political course.
Yeah. Oh, American money values the internet.
Well, when European Union was joining up with NATO, England didn't want that, and by England I mean London City, because you know London was an imperial empire, and they actually tried to cut that out. They were given independence because they wanted to get rid of the imperialism that was happening, that one person run the entire world and so on. Now they gave that up, and then America is trying to adopt it. They're like, no, we're not going to do that with the European Union. So they came out. So now whatever is happening with the European Union, London City doesn't want anything to do with that. So now the American dollar will be a lot less when these countries now join up against the imperialist power. Nobody wants American power. We want for people from America to be Americans. They consume too much. They would consume recklessly and without conscience. It's a political. This is what you're seeing here is a struggle for imperial power, but it doesn't look like the old school system of slavery and colonialism and all of that. It's new. They have organizations. We call them orders. You ever heard people talking about New World Order and all of these things? Mm-hmm. Yeah, these orders. But it's money run things. And the richest is Vatican City, London City, and Washington. And these presidents, they're just faces. They're just faces who take instructions from these people. Rather than run this country is IMF run this country. All of these lending agencies who are giving us millions of dollars to do all these projects, that when they come and they say, hey now, oh, they can't use cash anymore, they will get digital money. Yeah. We have no choice, but we're going to say no. We don't even have an army. Yeah, we don't even have an army. You think these little foot soldiers, these little policemen is an army? Please. Slavery is very real, you hear? This is the New World Order. Alright then, so that's enough politics. So we're going to look at what are the things a story needs. Let me hear some of your examples of what a story needs. What a story needs to survive, to exist, to become. You already have title, you have character. I gave you all one. I gave you all one. Theme. What did we say was the theme? The main idea or the main lesson or the forget the word? Moral or the thought. Yes. Tekla have notes for so. That's right. We have character. Now, when you hear people say, don't worry, that would build character. You see, when they're talking about building character, the virtues and the vices, it will build character. Another word for character, the main character, we call them persona. Persona. When you take off the off a persona, what you have? Person. That's where we get persons from. So you know what that means? When you say that person and that person, you know what that means? The etymology of the word person is from persona, meaning character, meaning just somebody in a story. So we put so much emphasis on ourselves as a person. I'm a type of person, you know. Listen, you're just pretending. You are whatever version of yourself in people's story. Right? Like some people, I am a crazy person in their story. And for some people, they are crackheads in my story. Wait. Right? So you have a character. And then we have, what else? In order to have a storyline, you have to have what? A plot. That's the storyline. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It literally says line, you know. Line. Story line. Beginning. Yes, what does it? Come tell me that chapter, Genesis 1. Let me hear you say.
Huh?
Recite it, let me hear. Genesis 1.
Genesis 1. Is that your Bible verse?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, tell me the one from John chapter 1. Go. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Right? So in the beginning, the beginning meaning time, storyline. He created the heaven. What is that? Space. And the earth is what? Heaven and earth is what? Come on, man.
Heaven is in space.
Heaven is in space.
The earth is in space.
The earth is in where we is. So what you call that? Land. Okay, we call that. Where are we? We call it a setting. Setting. I thought you would have guessed it. Setting. It must happen in a place and a space, no? Place, space, time. That's what the setting is. The place, the space, and the time. The story must have a beginning, middle, and an end, and it must happen in a specific place, in a specific space. It can't happen everywhere. It must be a specific place. Once upon a time, you know how stories always start. Once upon a time, there was a girl, a character, who lived in a shoe, a place. Right? So, theme, character, plot, setting. What else we need? Think about any story that you ever heard. Just think about any story.
Oh, how to steal that?
Tell me what you learned from that. It has theme,
We say
character.
I was reading that same
Team.
but I forget her. But I think I had the book still.
No, I want to hear what was in the story that made it a story.
Well, okay, so like in the beginning, like the characters that is in it is a boy and a girl and another which they was thrown out of their home, which they was renting an apartment, and so the three of them was living in the vehicle, and like it's like when they walk take a bath or whatever, they go in like say a restaurant, then nearby shop whatever, like McDonald's, to like be, but like they don't open shop because they don't have shops like.
They don't have a shower.
Right.
What's that?
What's that?
They don't have a shower.
They don't have a shop.
What do you call that? If you don't have a shower, what's that? In life. If you don't have something, what's that?
Everything's actually.
Okay, so if for example you didn't have something, then you would have what?
Nothing.
And that would be a?
Oh, they're right difficult, you know.
And when you don't have something, what is that? That is a serious. I wish I had $1,000 right now. I don't have $1,000. It seems like I have a. Start with P. They don't have a show. A problem. Right. So your stories must have a problem. We call these problems conflicts. Right? So this is the problem in the story. Now these problems exist in 3 ways. We call them crises. When people say I'm going through a crisis. Right. So these problems exist in a crisis. And we have 3 types of crisis. We have man versus man. That is when somebody trying to do me something. Right? And I have to battle against this somebody. Now the man doesn't have to be a man. It can be a robot. It can be a monster, a vampire, aliens. Right? You hear aliens land. Somebody put in the comments with the satellite that was falling the other day. Aliens have landed. I love it. It means that they have a rich imagination. So man versus man, and then we have man versus nature. What would be man versus nature? All the time, when it's 2 o'clock, because I don't want to hold all your time it is.
You tell him. 2 o'clock, no, 4 o'clock.
It's 2? Okay, so let's get this out of the way. It's 2 o'clock exactly. I'm telling my brain no when an hour is up. Man versus nature. What would be man versus nature?
The environment.
The environment, yes. So give me an example of a problem that we had here with environment.
Fire.
No, that is man versus man. Because there's somebody lighting the fire to harass other people. The suffrage. COVID. Hot sun, oh yes. This is man versus nature right now. Nature kill man dead. Right? Mosquitoes, malaria. Those things that we would consider acts of God. Right? Cockroach is an infestation.
Peanut trees I have bedroom.
Man versus nature. And the last one is, you all will love this one. Josiah, what do you think the last one is? I think sometimes this is the biggest problem we face in life.
Man versus ourselves.
Yes. For us to get up and come to class when everybody else coming to class. Hard. For us to get up and make our money. For us to get up and not feel like if we was because we're going through a crisis. We think the whole crisis is our life. No, that is just a part of our character building. How are we going to take this story and make this story epic? How are we going to change this evil into good? That is what it is. Sometimes man versus self. We sit down and we let certain evil eat away at our good.
You know how evil could go is if it was dead.
No, to time when everything is dead.
It's true because you cannot change an evil person mind.
No, that's not true. That is the reason why Jesus Christ came, my Lord and Savior, came on this earth to help people change their mind.
This is that evil wicked.
Trust me, people can change Josiah. Nobody can change people, but people can change themselves. It's not to say that they're going to be different, that they're not going to remember the times when they were going through the problem, but they can make the decisions to make sure that the events of their story do not relive the same pattern. That is what man versus self teaches. So when you write a story, man versus self, it is you overcoming, basically, as you say, killing that part of them, but not physically killing the person, but killing that part. Remember I tell you, these things are parts of the character. They are characteristics. You can kill characteristics of a person. You can kill characteristics of yourself. And that is what this story is about. So we'll pause here, and for homework, you will look and see if you find any more elements of plot. Elements of plot. And when we come, I will give you all the, well, by that time, the Google Classroom already has the note on it. So you all will go through the note, and you will see the information there. Thank you very much for coming. You all have a great day. Josiah, give me one word you learn.
Wash my foot and
Give me one word you learn.
What's your name?
One time. Very good. Very good. How to take off? How to take off this? Take it off. So that it will save. Save it for me. Save
You
it.
done video it?
If I take it off, it will save.
Yeah, no, and it does save automatically, I think.
It will save automatically.
What app this be?
Facebook.
What mean about Facebook?
Oh God.